Hello there. Today's topic will be the sounds of Norwegian. So, I wanted to make a video originally about the Norwegian alphabet, but I thought that it would be a bit more interesting to talk a bit more like sounds in general. So I split the video into three parts. We have part 1, the alphabet, part 2, pronunciation, and part 3, dialectal variation. So let's get right into it. Part 1, the alphabet. In the Norwegian alphabet, there are 29 letters. We use the Latin alphabet, same as with English, but at the end, after the X, Y, Z, there are 3 more letters, which we'll get into later. When it comes to pronunciation in this video, I will be mostly talking about Standard East Norwegian. It's also known as Urban East Norwegian. Standard East Norwegian is like the usual way to pronounce stuff if you speak an Eastern dialect, or if you watch Norwegian television. There will be dialects, but a lot of it is going to be sort of standardized, like this. Also, I myself am from the East, so the way I speak is very similar to this. I do speak sort of a mix between this and Oslo dialect. Also, if you want to use like an app like Duolingo, for example, they're going to have like text-to-speech with Norwegian. That text-to-speech is always going to be Standard East Norwegian. So let's continue. First, we have the letter A. In Norwegian, the letter A is a bit different from the English A. In English, for example, in words like father or hard, you'll notice that the sound is a bit like this ah sound. In Norwegian, we don't pronounce it like ah, but we move it a bit further back, so it's more like ah instead. In American English, this is actually the same sound as, for example, in words like dog or bother in like standard American accent. Like, I have a dog, you are bothering me. This ah sound is actually the same. So I put some example words here. I got my own name here. Patrick, right? In Norwegian, that would be pa, Patrick, not pa, not like Patrick, but more like pa. And we have the word good, bra, and we have roof, tak. So you'll hear that the sound is not the same as English. It's very similar. You can be excused for using the English pronunciation, but it is a foreign sound. Ah is the correct way to pronounce it. B. This is pronounced the same as in English. It's just the B sound. The name of the letter is B as well. We have A and then B. So I put some words here. Box is box. Bar is a bar. And bil is a car. This letter is called C in Norwegian. Usually it's pronounced as an S before, I'm going to use a Norwegian pronunciation here, E, I, A, and Ö. And before A, U, and U, it usually becomes a K sound, a K. The most common words you'll hear are here, PC is computer, and CD is a CD. There are exceptions. Words that are usually of Romance origins, if it's of Latin descent, we usually would have the pronunciation change depending on, is it taken from Italian or French, or is it just from Old Latin? So we have words like cello. We also pronounce cello because it's from Latin. We have campus. Campus follows the rule, so it's campus. And we have circa, which is the same as the English word, about or around. Next up, we've got D. The letter D is exactly the same as English. Dem is them. Du is toilet. And da is when in the past. E. So in Norwegian, the letter E, T, which means T, eksempel, example, and sted, which means a place. Next up, we've got F. F is the same as English. It's just an F sound. Example words, fakta, facts, fisk, fish, flamme, flame. Next up, we've got G. So this letter is pronounced usually like the English G that we have in words like gray or ghost. But there is a rule that before E or U, it becomes a Y sound, like in yes. Usually, you would hear it pronounced here, as in the words here, you'll have gres, or go, or gu. But before E and U, it becomes gift, or gyllen. Next up, we've got hå. Hå is the same as in English. There is no difference. We've got the words hest, meaning horse, hai, meaning shark, hex, which is a witch. E. E is the same as the English E. You can hear it in these words. Is, ice, India, India, spise, to eat. J. So this letter actually has two different variants of its name. You can either call it Ye, or you can call it Jod. When I was growing up in Oslo, we were always taught that this letter was called Jod. So everywhere we went, people would be calling it Jod. I mean, people didn't really name the letter that often, but if we were to do that, everyone would call it Jod, 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 Jod. But right now, I am actually living in the middle of Norway, and everyone I talk to here, they always say it's pronounced Ye. Always Ye. No one calls it Jod here. So I think it might be depending on where you live, actually. This sound is the same as the English yes or yellow. Here are some examples, like ja, it means yes, actually. We got hjem, which is a home, and jeg, which means I. Next up, we've got ko. Ko is the same as the English K, except for if there is an E or an Y after it, or if it's written K and J, then it becomes a sh sound. This sound is a palatal fricative. It's sort of like you take the English word hue. You don't actually say who, right? Even though it's written H-U-E, you don't say who. You have this like sharper hue. So take that hue sound and sort of push it a little bit more. Make it a bit more like a sh sound. So it's like hue, right? Emphasize that a bit more. And that's the sound. So we got words like kino, kylling. Actually, nowadays, a lot of young people living in the cities are struggling to make this sound. Instead of a palatal fricative, they would use an alveopalatal fricative. So instead of kino, you might hear kino instead. Instead of kylling, you might hear kylling. And it's relatively close. In the future, you might actually hear that become a thing instead. Like maybe in 20 years from now, this video is going to be obsolete because of that. I don't know. Other than that, the K is pronounced like in English. Kan, can, ku, cow, hur, wire. L. This is an interesting one because in Standard East Norwegian, we have two different types of L. The name of the letter is L. I know a lot of American people are struggling to make this sound. It's the same as we've got in Spanish. It's sort of like you take your L, this L sound, and you make it a bit more soft. Because usually when you say L, your tongue is kind of wrapped up in your mouth, like L. But you try to unfold it a bit. Instead of like wrapped up like this, it goes a bit more like that. And you can hear this often in a lot of British accents. Like the letter itself is called L, but it's pronounced L. And that's the same we have in Norwegian. And that's how we pronounce the name of the letter. There is also a rule that after the vowels A and O, L becomes the same as in American L. For example, here we've got some words. We got two words with the standard sound, and we got two words with the like other sound. So we've got liten, little, lam, a lamb, and here we have the other ones. After the O, it becomes ball. Here you can see that there's U, not L, and alle. Here again it's an U, just like in English. M is as you would expect, just like in English. We got words like mamma, mom, min, my, and mest, most. N, surprisingly similar. We've got words like Norge, Norway, nei, no, and neste, next, which is where we're going now. This sound is a bit tricky. This letter is U. When I hear beginners try to pronounce this, I usually hear more of an U or an O sound. Basically, to make this sound, take for example the word sore, or if you speak British English, usually you'd pronounce dog as dog. Take that O sound, O, and round your lips so it becomes like O, ooh. You can also take, for example, wow. That is basically oo, ah, ooh, wow. When you end on that oo, that's the sound we want. Ooh. We got words like sol, sun, stor, big, and bro, bridge. There is also a rule that when it's a short vowel, it's usually pronounced like an O sound instead. So in these two words, it's sommer and voksen. Next up we've got P. P is the same as English P. For example, in these words, pappa is dad, pinne is a stick, and potet is a potato. Next up we got Q. The letter Q, is not really used that much. It does exist. There's a brand of milk called Q-milk, and the joke is that Q with the K and U means cow, but they wrote the letter Q instead because it's pronounced the same. Other than that brand, the most common word you'll find is quiz, which is quiz. R. So this here is very different from the English R. The R we use in Norwegian is kind of a common sound you'll hear a lot in many European languages. If you know anything about British RP, it's the sound they would use there very often. This sound is usually something a lot of English speakers struggle with. Basically, what you can do is take the word better or butter if you speak American English, or you can try to pronounce it with an American accent. If you chop up that word, it's basically b, e, r, better. That r sound is what you want. Another kind of cool thing you can try is try to say pedins of pedusha. Then try to say that faster and faster. Your tongue will actually naturally move towards this sound. Pedins of pedusha, pedins of Prussia, prince of Prussia, prince of Prussia. You get this r sound. And that is exactly the sound we need. We got words like ro, calm, or to row. We got rar, means weird. And we got riste, means to shake. S is the same as English, just an S. We got words like soap, mushroom, see, to say, and små, small. Te is like the English T. We got words like trist, sad, to, or text, text. This one might be a bit harder for some people. It's U. So U doesn't really exist in English. You might hear it in some British accents. To get to this sound, take for example the word cool, and you'll notice that cool is actually most often a diphthong. You've got oo, ul. Ku, ul. Try to isolate that first part. Ku, right? take that oo and try to move it a bit closer to an e, ooey, and then cut it before you actually get there. So you get this like ooh, 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 and then just stop here on this ooh, ooh. You can hear this sound in words like sunn, healthy, under, under, and kul, cool. Next up we've got ve, which is exactly the same as the English V. For example, ven, friend, va, what, and vi, we. This sound is W. We literally call it double V in Norwegian. The reason why it's double V in Norwegian and double U in English has something to do with Latin, because as you may or may not know, the Latin letter V was originally pronounced as an oo, and then they would put it in the beginning of a word, and then it was a quick wah sound. If you had, for example, an oo and an a, you would pronounce it wah. But if you had it in the middle of a word, it would be an oo sound. So later on, they would put this V and another V together, and they would make that into a specific letter for the wah sound. And then that became double oo or double U. While in Norwegian, we didn't really care about the pronunciation. We just called it double V because it's literally the letter V instead. That said though, we do pronounce it like a V in Norwegian anyway, so that makes sense. It's mostly used in words imported from other languages. For example, vok, walk, WC, which is a water closet, it means a toilet. You'll see it written everywhere. And watt, which is watts in regards to electricity. X is exactly like the English X, and like the W, it's only used in loanwords from other languages. For example, taxi, taxi, unisex, unisex, and Texas, Texas. This letter is super easy to pronounce, but a lot of people struggle with it. I want to fix that. Take the sound E, as in hear or beat. Take that E and do what we did before. Round your lips. So you get this E, and then you make it like this, and then you say E. And that's it. Inside your mouth, it's the same thing. E, E, no difference. Only difference is your lips. E, E. That's it. We got some example words. Si means to sow. Ny means new. And fly means a plane. Finally, before we get to the Norwegian specific letters, we've got set. So in English, it's pronounced like a Z. But the thing is, in Norwegian, we don't have this voiced Z sound. We don't have that. Think of it like in British or Australian English, it's usually not Z, it's Z, right? So you take that Z and you just remove all voicing from that and it becomes set. Like a set. This is also used most often in words imported from other languages. We've got words like jazz, jazz, nazist, Nazi, and zombie, zombie. The first Norwegian letter is A. A lot of people struggle to distinguish between the first letter, A, and this one, A. The problem, I think, is that a lot of people don't know that the letter A is not A, but it's A, right? And then when a lot of people hear this, they think that this sound is also an ah sound. So they're like, ah and ah, what's the difference? The difference is very simple. The first letter is in the back of your throat, ah. This letter is, if you look at the letter actually, you can see it's comprised of the letter A and the letter E. And A and E in Norwegian are A and E, right? this letter is actually the sound in between those sounds. If you try to say ah, and then you move up to an e, you get this I, right? If you stop in the middle there, ah, e, you get this ah sound. And that's exactly the sound we need. In fact, this sound does exist in English, and it's mostly in British English though. In American, it's usually a bit sharper, bad or mad or dad. In British, it's more like mad, sad, dad, right? That's that ah sound that we need. Ah. We got words here. Are, honor, tar, toes, and var, weather. Next up, we've got a way easier letter. This is is made by taking the sound e and you round your lips. Just like with e and u. You take e and then you do this and it becomes See? We got words like brød, bread, snø, snow, and frø, seed. Last up, we've got the easiest one. This is å. This sound is like the å sound in English in words like sore, gore, war. It's this å sound. In Norwegian though, it is a bit further down your throat, å, but it's not really something you'll notice a lot. Try to listen to how I say it and repeat after me. Blå, blue. Gå, go. Tå, toe. Out of all the three extra letters, I think this one is the easiest one. And that's it for the alphabet. Now we got part 2, pronunciation. So, first up, Retroflex Sounds. In Standard East Norwegian, and also in a lot of dialects, we've got this retroflex sound. What does retroflex mean, you might ask? You'll hear this often in, for example, a lot of Indian languages, Indian accents, Indian people when they speak English. So, in Norwegian, we got 4 retroflex sounds. We have she, te, de, and ne. To make them, you just take the alveolar way of saying them, which is she, te, de, ne, and you just move your tongue further back. A trick that I like to do is stick your finger in your mouth and try to say it. She, te, de, ne. She, te, de, ne. And then leave your tongue in that position. She, te, de, ne. Now when do we make these sounds? If there's an R and an S, we always make she. If there's an R and a T, it's almost always te. If it's an R and a D, it's almost always de. R and N is always N. Examples, we got norsk, Norwegian, kart, map, sardine, which is a sardine, and barn, which means child. Next up, D at the end of a word is usually silent. It's usually not pronounced. For example, land, rund, kald, fjord. Which is kind of funny because everyone knows this word, fjord. Like a lot of people think it sounds really cool with this fjord. But we don't actually pronounce it like that in Norwegian. We say fjord. When the D is after an N or an L, it's often understood as a copy of that letter before, as you can see here. We do have some exceptions though. Tid, time, and fred, peace, are pronounced with the D. T at the end of a neuter singular definite form is always silent. That sounds like a lot to ingest, but what that means is when you have a house, the house, or a map, the map, the something, when it's neuter, gender, that T at the end is never pronounced. So et hus, huset, et kart, kartet. Et barn, barnet. Et fjell, fjellet. Silent L. This is this is like something you won't really see a lot, but before a J, the L is always silent. In words like jo, meaning a scythe, or ljuge, meaning to lie. Next, words ending in ig are always silent. Or I should rephrase this. When you have ig at the end, that G is always silent. Take for example, vanskelig, hard, farlig, dangerous, mektig, powerful, and seig, sticky. Silent H. H before V or J is always silent. Take for example, hjem, hva, jul, hvit. Next up we got diphthongs. U-I is always pronounced oi, like boycott. E-I is always pronounced ei, bein. O-Y is also pronounced oi, like soya. And again, E-I is ei, bei. Devoicing. We have a rule in Norwegian that very few Norwegian people actually know about, but they do it still. A voiced consonant before an unvoiced consonant becomes unvoiced. What this means is we have something called voiced consonants and unvoiced consonants. They're pairs in most languages. Yeah, for example, te, de, pe, be, ke, ge, fe, and the, right? Basically what you see here on the left side is the unvoiced version, and on the right side is the voiced variant of the same sound. The only difference is whether or not your vocal folds are vibrating as you make the sound. Here, for example, when you have the word absolute, we never actually say this with a B. It's actually a P sound. It's absolute. Because the S is unvoiced, B before it has to be unvoiced as well. Same thing with the next one, because the T is unvoiced, the V has to become unvoiced as well. So we pronounce this as avtale. So K and G. K and G in Norwegian are more palatalized. What that means is you take the sound and you sort of put like this E or a Y sound after it. Think about the difference between ka, ga, and ki, and gi. What we want in Norwegian is take those ki and gi, cut the E, and use the consonant. Listen to these words. Takk, dag, lage, drikke. I hear a lot of foreigners pronounce these words like takk, dag, lage, drikke, but it should be more palatalized. Takk, dag, lage, drikke. Take my name for example, it's Patrick. You'll hear the K at the end is not a K. We don't say, like in English, Patrick with a K sound. We don't say that. Patrick. We say Patrick with this K sound. Next up, it's over to the final part, dialectal variation. This part is not as long. We're reaching the end of the video, but there are just a few things I want to teach you before you can leave the nest and hopefully understand what most people say. First up, let's talk about the R sound in Norwegian. We actually have 4 different sounds of R. The first one is the one we talked about in the beginning. Re, re, rø, brø, ri. The second one is only used in middle or northern Norwegian. Not everyone uses it, but you're still gonna hear it. Basically, you take the r and you mix it with a sh or a like a French je sound, and you get this je, je. This is very similar to the sound used in Mandarin. For example, the word for person is ren. That r sound there is the same as in middle/northern Norwegian. You can hear it in words like, in standard Norwegian we would say arbeid, But in the middle / north, they might say arbeid or arbeid. Next up, we've got Western / Southern R, which is uvular. It is the same as the one in German or French, this R sound. I should specify though, the sound is always used in the south, and it's kind of 50-50 in the west. You'll hear it mostly in like Kristiansand, Stavanger, and Bergen is where they're mostly used. There are some western cities that have the standard R, but the R is kind of spreading out and removing that now. It's also very important to mention that in dialects that do have the R sound, we don't have retroflex consonants. They cannot overlap each other. So for example, the words we had before, norsk, kart, sardine, and barn, if you have a uvular R, you will pronounce these norsk, kart, sardine, and barn. You cannot combine uvular R, and retroflex. The last one is something known as a retroflex flat. It's actually kind of an L/R allophone that is often used in dialects in the east and in the middle of Norway. It's when you have an R and a D most often. In standard Norwegian and all the other dialects, it would be pronounced just as an R. For example, the word table, in standard Norwegian and most dialects, it would be pronounced bord, but in some eastern and middle dialects, they would pronounce it bord, kind of like Indian sounding. It's like a mix between the American R and L, but you use it as a flap, like a bord. It's not used that often, but you'll hear it in a lot of dialects for another sound, which we're going to get to now, L. I said before that we have two L's in Norwegian. We have L and we have L. There is actually a third one as well, which is a retroflex L. And this one is used in Eastern dialects and Middle Norwegian or Trønder dialects. And this is the same sound that we just talked about, this re. It's commonly used when there is a consonant before the L. For example, blå becomes brå, glad becomes glad, glass becomes glass. And this is actually a very common sound you're gonna hear like all the time. I wrote in the presentation that it's Eastern/Middle, but it is used in the North as well. The only place that really doesn't use this is like the West/South of Norway. They wouldn't be using that. Next, we got palatalization. We talked about this before. Palatalization means articulating through the hard palate inside your mouth. So in Trøndersk, which is a dialect spoken in the middle of Norway, and in some northern dialects as well, you'll hear the consonants being palatalized all the time. Take for example, ball becomes ball, hon becomes hon or han, and litt becomes lik. This is something that takes a bit of time to get used to, but you will probably come across this, as from the middle of Norway all the way up to the north is a lot of people. Next up we got consonant softening. Unstressed consonants become softened in southern dialects. Only dialects that are very far south. You got, for example, bløt becomes blød, kake, kage, ete, ede. This is a very typical southern, like Kristiansand type of thing. So if you travel to the south, it's very useful to know this. And that is actually it for the video. Recording this took a bit more than an hour, and in the meantime, the sun decided to go up. Because right now, I'm living in the middle of Norway, and it's very dark when you wake up in the morning until like 10 a.m. Anyways, if you've got any questions about Norwegian, write to me. I'll answer you or make a video about it. Thank you for watching. I wish you all the best with your Norwegian studies, and if you have any friends or family learning Norwegian, I would love it if you shared my video with them so that they can learn as well. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next one.